Today, on Locked On Phoenix Suns, news on Monday that Darvin Ham is, in fact, joining an assistant coaching staff despite spurning the Suns earlier in the offseason. Meanwhile, the two hires the Suns have made in the front office so far this summer both have connections to Mat Ishbia. It all begs the question, are the Suns desirable? And what does that mean when it comes to the most important ingredient, the players? Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we're back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, host of the Just Basketball show, wherever you get your podcasts. A big thank you and a big welcome to all of you. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your Tuesday. We're here for you every single day. We're free and available everywhere that you get your podcasts, including YouTube. So hit that button wherever you are. Get a new episode on your feed, in your feed, every single Monday through Friday. Stick right here, right along with me. Become an everydayer. Everything you need to know about the Suns, all off season long. I promise. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, I'm going to turn this fan on for the YouTube audience there, and I'm going to get started with the Phoenix Suns missing out on Darvin Ham, as well as acquiring, signing, bringing in 2 members of the front office. Now, I'm going to kind of talk about them in conjunction, and I have a comparison for you, different spot in the NBA, a different city, a different market that can maybe tell us a little bit more about where this thing might be headed. But let's get to the news first, the facts of the situation. Darvin Ham of the Los Angeles Lakers, of course, most recently as the head coach for the past 2 seasons, signed with the Milwaukee Bucks, which of course is where he made his bones as an assistant under the new Suns head coach, Mike Budenholzer, for several years. Of course, won a championship with the Detroit Pistons as a player and on, but that was his home base. Maybe the fact is Milwaukee was more home to him than Bud's staffs were home to him, although, of course, Ham was in Atlanta with Bud as well. So a little bit of an eyebrow raiser, right? Especially when you factor in that when the news came out about Ham not joining the Suns and them extending an offer to David Fizdale instead of Ham, the kind of vibe of that info was that Ham was just going to take a minute, take a load off. The Lakers situation, as it is for everybody, just ask J.J. Redick or James Borrego, who are caught in the middle of it now, or Frank Vogel before that. It's pretty bad. It's pretty stressful. It's pretty high pressure, and that he just was over that. But here he is, nevertheless, taking an assistant job. Which, of course, again, begs the question, did he just not want to come be part of the Suns organization? The Bucks have just as much pressure, right? The Bucks have familiarity, but so do the Suns. Maybe I don't know about his family situation. Maybe there's some people that relocated to Milwaukee during all of his years there, and he's going to go rejoin them. I'm not sure, but it's interesting, that sequence of events. At the same time, the Suns hire Matt Tellem, who I believe goes by Matty Tellem, and Brian Gregory to their front office. Matt Tellem will be an assistant general manager, basically replacing Trevor Buckstein, who had been here for a very long time, predating, almost as long as Robert Sarver was here, Trevor Buckstein was here. He's gone now. He was the Suns cap guy. Tellem will replace that role. And then Brian Gregory is going to be the vice president of player programming. Now, teams call front office positions sort of nebulous, silly things sometimes. But let's think of it as a 1-to-1 for Morgan Cato, who was fired basically this past month after the season ended. She had been here for 2 years, and I don't remember her exact title, but effectively the same type of thing. The front offices, especially as the league has grown and there's more money and there's more people and all this stuff, most front offices will have this type of position, which is like the guy who did it for the Suns even before Morgan Cato was named Shaq Albro, I think is how you say his name. He is with the Bulls now, okay? So it's just connecting players with different initiatives and opportunities that they might want to take advantage of, making sure everything is accounted for their families to be involved where they might want to be involved. It's kind of like, I guess you would say, like a group morale, like a team development, not player development, but team development off the court position. Now, Gregory comes from college basketball. He was the coach at the University of South Florida for the past 6 seasons, and has bounced around quite a bit. He was at Dayton. He was at Georgia Tech. And those are all, this is a real guy. Before that, though, he was an assistant at Michigan State. And, of course, that should get your attention. We'll come back to him. Matt Tellem was with the Nets for his entirety of his front office career in the NBA. But the most important part, and I don't, not to say he's not a talented guy or not to say that he's not worthy of this, from all aspects and rumors and reports here, he is very capable and should be a good addition here. But his last name is the same as a power agent in the NBA, which is Arn Tellem, who a few years back basically stepped away from the agent game, and he went to a front office, which is the Detroit Pistons. That is the same place that Suns team president Josh Bartelstein worked at, who is also the son of an agent. Where we are with all of this is basically from the Michigan State connection, where Brian Gregory coached as an assistant when Mat Ishbia was on the Spartans team that won a championship, and for the whole time Ishbia was at Michigan State, to this Tellem gentleman, to, the Isaiah Thomas rumors and everything else. The guys who have joined this organization, the people who have joined this organization, at least in the management space, have connections to Mat Ishbia. They are his people. It's not to say they're not qualified, not good, not going to be good, effective. We don't know. I'm not going to tell you one way or the other. But he's getting them because of relationships. When he took over, a lot of people were, hey, they're going to get Sam Presti, they're going to go do this and that, Bob Myers, and never say never. But that has not been what they've done. They have gotten Mat Ishbia's guys. Now, you add to that the coaching side of things, where Ham spurned the Suns, and frankly, last summer, the same thing happened with Nick Nurse. You can write a story and make a narrative in any direction you want, and I'm really not trying to do that. But I'm arriving at a question, especially with how strapped the Suns are, asset and resource-wise, when it comes to team building, and the fact that now for 3 straight off seasons, they've lost in embarrassing fashion on their home court, and especially punctuated by this sweep. Is this a place people want to be? You have, and again, look, Frank Vogel selected the Suns. I told you my takeaway from Mike Budenholzer's press conference was that he wanted to be here. But even then, there's the hometown effect. So when I try to zoom out, again, I promise you, I'm not trying to tell you that nobody wants to work for the Suns. They have Kevin Durant on their team. They have Devin Booker on their team. Bradley Beal, an owner who's willing to spend. That's better than, maybe not what Mat Ishbia said, that 29 other teams would switch, or 27 or whatever he said. But I'll tell you for sure, a lot of other teams, a lot of people working for other teams would prefer this over what they have. But are the Suns attracting the best and the biggest and the game-changing, the talent, not just on the court, but off the court and behind the scenes that the best franchises do? With Ham saying no, with Nurse saying no, with Budenholzer, it could go either way. And with the guys they are getting largely being connections to what's already here, I mean, we can probably say the Suns aren't the top of the top despite being a super team and all the hype they've gotten for a while. That's a little bit of a challenge. Not one they can't overcome. But it begs the question of what comes next. Do players see this as a place they want to be? And what does history tell us about how other flashy, big shot new owners have handled this situation, and whether there's a light at the end of the tunnel? We'll dive into both of those next. First, today's show brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more, and you can bet on all of it at FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything, from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. With these, look, it's a no-brainer. You find very short odds, something that is going to work for you, put a little money down, win it, and then get to work with the rest of your work. The NBA Finals, Wednesday. I'm not really looking at game odds necessarily at this point in time, but you could get minus 950 for Boston to win the series. That'll take a little bit longer to get you your bonus bets, but it might just be worth it. You have some, guys to score X number of points. Those ones you can get big minus odds for. Then you get to work, add a big win to your summer bucket list, then go to work on the parlays, the money lines, the point spreads, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to try it out. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Keeping the show rolling, let's hit on history. We're not going to go back into the 70s or 80s, and I promise this will be interesting, but it's new for the Suns. Jerry Colangelo started the team. It was, the NBA was on like rickety ground back then. He turns the team and helps turn the league and USA Basketball and all this stuff into a powerhouse. Great. Jerry Colangelo is a well-respected sports figure. We don't need to go over that. Robert Sarver is not anybody's idea of a hot shot or a big wig or anything, and he's pretty cheap the whole time he's here. So from Suns land, there's not a lot to look at. And honestly, in other sports, the same. Ken Kendrick's a pretty cheap owner. And, Michael Bidwell, literally the team is his family business, and history speaks for itself there. So it is a little bit necessary to look a little bit bigger picture in the NBA to really get our answer here. And the NBA's seen no shortage of big-time owner team purchases in recent history. So I looked at three, I guess, total, but really only a handful of teams here, because the Brooklyn Nets are one, right, where Mikhail Prokhorov buys the team, and then shortly thereafter, I guess not shortly, 10 years after that, Joe Tsai buys the team. And what's interesting is, to start there, both of those owners kept things pretty normal, status quo. If you're looking for like the next bright star or flashy name to come run your team, if you're Mikhail Prokhorov, it's probably not Billy King, which is the guy that he basically hired. Not to say anything negative about him. I mean, he made the KG trade. But other than that, whatever. And same thing can be said for Tsai. Right before Prokhorov sold the team, he hires Sean Marks and Kenny Atkinson, and they kind of reset things after the KG trade, and they're on their way. And obviously that laid the foundation that KD and Kyrie wanted to eventually go be part of from a stability and structure standpoint. Really overhauled the Nets, made them respectable. So when Tsai comes in, he just keeps that all in place. Sean Marks still works there, so he's survived not only to an ownership change, but also multiple different iterations of the team. So that doesn't really work out, right? Steve, at least it doesn't, I don't mean to say work out. It doesn't highlight this idea of an owner coming in and just flipping everything over. The Clippers, Steve Ballmer, 2014. Now, that one's a little, hard to evaluate as well, right? Because they get the Chris Paul trade, they draft Blake Griffin, it's Lob City, they're in the playoffs again, they're finally finding some success. It would have been kind of crazy for Steve Ballmer to come in and shake everything up, but again, sort of did the opposite of that, right? He eventually empowers Doc Rivers to become coach and GM. Then after that, Lawrence Frank, who had been a long-time coach in the NBA, assistant coach, jumps to the front office, but he's an old-timer, He's a lifer. So that's not exactly some kind of... And he already worked for the team. So, we talk about these new owner syndrome things. Front office shakeup. This idea of, wooing these big names, maybe it doesn't really align with reality. The other one I looked at was Mark Cuban. Okay, and again, just to talk about desirability before we get to Mark Cuban, the Nets, whether it was Prokhorov, obviously they get Kirilenko, who they overpay, and they make some trades to get I guess they signed Aaron Williams. They made trades to get KG and Pierce, and okay, a little more desirable, and then again lays the foundation to get Kevin Durant. So players did react and respond, and that you could say has started to happen in Phoenix. Clippers, say what you want. Doc was there. The players were basically there. I don't know. They laid the foundation. Ballmer gets there, and eventually Kawhi and PG sign up. But, okay, so mostly the players. Ty Lue, that's a big one, but he was on the assistant staff. Dallas. Mark Cuban comes in, and it is exactly the opposite of, one, I think people were a little suspect of him. The Mavericks had not really been a great team, and, they're second fiddle in Dallas, and what are these two Euro guys? Or I guess Dirk being a Euro, Nash being a Canadian dude. What's up here? Is this really going to win? But Cuban just empowers the two Nelsons to just keep things going. When he buys the team in 2000, it took almost 20 years for the father and son to finally be gone from the organization, and now you have Nico Harrison and Jason Kidd and everything else. So, Dallas has never really historically even gotten the player side of it to be wooed by spending. And coaches, whatever. Avery Johnson and Rick Carlisle, it's not nobodies. They've had success. They won a championship. They've made the finals now 3 times. But not a huge trend, you would say, oh, Cuban got there. Either he hired his guys, or he got the big names, or laid a foundation players wanted to come to. Doesn't really fit in any of those camps. He's been loud and brash and all that throughout the whole time, but it hasn't materialized in anything. The times they won, they built around their draft and developed star and Dirk, and then again with Luka. Which brings us to the example that I do think fits the Suns best. The Golden State Warriors in 2010. There is the exploding offer from Lacob, Goober, and the partners, the group that they put together to buy the team from Peter Cohan right before it's about to just explode in value. And then now, Lacob, Goober, these guys are not somebody's idea of these rich freaks. Those guys were just sort of savvy businessmen who assembled a group at the right time in the right place and were good negotiators, and they got the team. But young-ish, Lacob was in his mid-50s when he bought the team, much older than, obviously, Ishbia, but still, not some elderly person, which is what some of these owners are. And is sort of new money in this idea of holy crap, I have an NBA team now. And pretty much within 2 years, they had flushed everything and restarted. Bob Myers, Steve Kerr, Bob Myers and Mark Jackson in the door. A few years later, Steve Kerr in the door. They, start fresh there. But then, slowly but surely, Joe Lacob brings his son Kirk into the fold. And I believe he might have another son involved. I don't, want to speak out of turn. Maybe, whatever. Kirk is definitely a part of the organization, a voice, a major voice. And then Mike Dunleavy sort of is just lingering there as a former player who slides in, and you always kind of get the impression he's maybe an ownership guy, and now he's the GM there after Myers steps away. So that to me is where the Suns situation could be headed. A guy who had this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, maybe never thought he would get a team or never thought it would happen so suddenly, and then it does. A little bit inclined toward involvement. He involved in the first women's league in America, Lacob was, and then the Celtics, and then, wow, I'm running the team in the middle of Silicon Valley in this boom moment for social media and tech and all this stuff in that area of the country. What the hell? This is crazy. Let me go hog wild. And he did. Kind of feels like that's the closest parallel. Now, I'm not telling you that will happen with Ishbia, but I guess the track record could go in a variety of ways. The Cuban way, where it's just sort of the pocketbooks and the, involvement and just investment and care for the franchise. It could be Ballmer, where he just sort of lets things progress and the money is there and, the market helps, and Phoenix would have that too. Obviously, the Brooklyn Nets, it's just been stability. It's just been natural growth. Or the Warriors, where it does sort of feel like my people, my ideas, my brain trust is going to be what rules the day. Now, for the Warriors, of course, Kevin Durant comes, Andre Iguodala comes. There's all sorts of things to prove that it was a desirable place to be. There's been assistant coaches who have come there through the years and gotten a lot out of that experience, ring-chasing vets, and the Warriors are not anybody's idea of a cautionary tale. It has worked for them. Does it work for everybody? And what happens if you don't get lucky with that once-in-a-generation talent like Steph Curry and a cat boom to get Durant in the door and all of that stuff? The Suns already have the star talent in part, but it's about extending that window. 2022 championship, we never thought the Warriors would win. Money, market, those things make an organization and a city and a team desirable. But there are ways to maybe do that and hedge your bets and be a little smarter. And there's ways that are shooting for the moon. That is what the Warriors did. They landed in the stars and it worked. Those other cities, though, they show the in-between you can end up in if that spend and that investment and that whatever doesn't always pan out. You kind of got to be smart and have the resources. And the smart can come at the expense of the resources when the guy with the resources thinks that he has the smarts. Let's talk about players. Do players want to be here? Will players want to be here after last summer when it was everybody's top of the top choice? Is that going to be the same in free agency coming up in 2024? We'll get into that coming up next. First, today's show brought to you by BetterHelp, coming in to overhaul and fix therapy for people who want that easy access. We all carry around different stressors, big and small. When we keep them bottled up, it can affect us negatively. Therapy, though, is a safe space to get things off your chest and figure out how to work through whatever's weighing you down. Therapy, I've said it 100 times here and truly believe it, does not have to be prompted by something extreme or terrifying or an emergency in your life. It can be about opening up, getting things off your chest, and finding somebody who's an external, separate person from what is weighing you down in your life. It's not a family member or a friend who might, have an involvement there. It's an unbiased source. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's online, convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. All you got to do to get started is fill out a brief questionnaire matched with a licensed therapist, and then you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. So get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Closing out the show. I hope you guys followed the therapy, BetterHelp's on the Mind history conversation there in that last segment. And in that first segment, all I'm doing is asking the question, okay? Trying to read the tea leaves, trying to connect the dots. Are the Suns more desirable or less desirable now than they may have been when Ishbia bought the team or last summer and on down the line? I think the best measurement of that, though, will be players, not only because they have the most maybe leverage. There's 30 teams, there's free agency, there's an agent. It's a little easier for players to jump around than coaches to just be willy-nilly about it. And also players will matter the most, you know. Brian Gregory or whoever fills into a front office could be awful or great and, you know, ultimately not have an extreme impact on winning a championship. Player, even a minimum signing, could. You know, Sam Hauser, not like he's winning the title for Boston, but, you know, Derek Jones Jr., even the caliber of guy the Suns could sign this offseason, of course, can make a difference. The trades, maybe wanting to be in Phoenix. Maybe the trades, that's not where you'll see that squeak into place so much, right? Like, did Grayson Allen want to be in Phoenix? Who knows? Had a great year. Re-signed. Certainly wanted to be in Phoenix after he feasted on all those open shots. But you catch my drift. I'll take you back to last year. Eric Gordon signing in Phoenix. And there were reports, you know, I just mentioned Mark Cuban. There were reports that Dallas was a place and maybe Golden State was a place where he had, with the Mavs, potentially as big of a deal as the mid-level. In the Clippers cut him, but I believe they could have spent a little bit more money to re-sign him because he was already on their team. The Warriors, maybe they would have just had a minimum as well. But he chose here, and he was kind of this like symbol of the fact that the Suns were a destination for that one moment in time, right? And then, of course, some of these mid-prime veteran players, these guys that had shown something on lesser teams but were looking for an opportunity to prove themselves. A bunch of them picked the Suns. Bradley Beal waived a no-trade clause to come to Phoenix. Probably should have said that before Gordon, to be honest, of course. And you would have come off of last summer, and I'm sure I said it on the show numerous times, right here, feeling like, wow, this is the place to be. This is the place that ring-chasing vets are trying to come sign. This is the place that, you know, star players are going to ask to be traded to. Of course, Durant wanted to be with the Suns allegedly, reportedly, prior to Mat Ishbia being a name we'd ever even heard. But yeah, that, Beal, Gordon, all these other mid-prime veteran guys, as James Jones calls them, wow, here it is. Is that going to be the case this summer? Right? Like, Gerald Bourguet has done a good job writing at PHNX about some of the, you know, basically looking at all the possible guys that could be candidates to sign with the Suns this summer. From the improbable to the realistic. He talked about bigs in an article this week, like Kevon Looney, like Andre Drummond, like, you know, whatever. He talked last week about more pie-in-the-sky guys. Now, I'll skip some of them because they were that pie-in-the-sky. They're not going to come. But D'Anthony Melton, good example of an Eric Gordon type guy. Struggled with injuries and role and keeps getting moved around. Coming off of an injury, maybe, you know, he would sign a minimum. Buddy Hield. Let's just throw that as an option. Even guys who are coming off of minimums this year, Derek Jones Jr., Kelly Oubre, Kyle Anderson, perfect example. Kyle Anderson would be the Eric Gordon of this summer, where certainly could get more money somewhere, but his team might think he's too expensive. Other teams might not have as big of a role for him. Kyle Anderson could come to Phoenix and probably be something close to a sixth man. Will the Suns' argument hold weight? Will players look at this situation and say it's worth trying it out? 1 year minimum, no long-term security, no guarantee of a deep run now with the past, but a role and star power and an invested in franchise and a place where everything's going to be taken care of for you off the court, a sparkling new practice facility, wonderful, luscious food, and whatever. Is that going to work? Is the pitch going to be received as well by these free agents as it was last summer? I have to say no. I think Ham rejecting this situation is a good example of why. Home might be Milwaukee for him. Maybe he still has relationships there that made it feel like a better fit. But he also could have come here, probably gotten paid quite a bit of money, and had as good of a shot to win a championship. Okay, you can bicker about the Eastern Conference and this and that, but that's not too different from what Kyle Anderson's facing, right? He could go back to Minnesota on a minimum if they think he's too expensive to keep on a bigger contract because of their tax concerns. He could just go back there. He's been there. He's comfortable. He's familiar. He could go. That's his Milwaukee in the case of Ham. Now, the other ramification of the front office hires being Ishbia guys is this isn't exactly, stockpiling. Even, as I said, it wasn't a big swing by Ballmer to maybe keep Frank or Rivers in place, or for Brooklyn with Sean Marks, or Dallas with Don Nelson. But those guys were older, experienced, proven commodity vet guys in basketball who were going to have that effect in part by themselves. James Jones is well respected. Do not get me wrong. The dude's nickname is literally Champ. I've never heard anybody have a bad thing to say about him. I think he's done a solid job executing the task at hand. One summer by another, even if you can pick nits in what he's done. But James Jones is not Doc Rivers. James Jones, well, maybe he's Sean Marks, right? Okay, you can make that case. He's not Don Nelson. So you add those things together, these front office dudes are not going to be what brings the Suns notoriety or attention or trust from players or other coaches or whatever. Maybe Bud will. Bud could certainly help that. The players, of course, will help that. KD probably more than anybody, or Book from what he's done, proving himself in the postseason despite being younger. But I don't think the Suns are as desirable now as they were last summer. And if this is the direction of the way that the front office and the behind-the-scenes brain trust is going to be crafted, especially looking toward maybe one day when James Jones gets replaced, it's a weird situation. It's a weird situation where the money is there, but it might not be enough to get people's attention. That'll wrap us up for the day. Enjoy your Tuesday. We'll be back throughout the week. Steven Perjone will be here to break down some hoops as he does every week. We'll have draft news, rumors, maybe more of this coaching and front office stuff. Who knows? Always something in Sunsland. Keep it right here to get caught up and up to date on all of it throughout the summer and beyond. Hit follow, hit subscribe. I'll catch you guys tomorrow.